Steve Mignani here doing the junkyard crawl at Bernardston Auto Wrecking in Bernardston, Massachusetts. Now, we all know that everything eventually has its day and becomes very collectible, and that includes the second generation Toyota Supra made between mid-81 and 1986. The angular styling, the wheel arches, the big 6-cylinder engine, 175 horsepower, a big deal. They're really quite hot. Why is there one here in the junkyard? Well, here's the thing. Is this really a Supra? Yes and no. Actually, more no. We'll call this the Pseudo Supra. This is a 1982 through 84 Celica GT-S, which is basically a Supra from the firewall back, but a Celica from the firewall forward. I'll explain. Now, the Supra part of the equation comes down to the disc brakes and independent rear suspension, which were part of the GT-S Celica and standard on Supra. A standard Celica would have had a live axle, coil springs, and drum brakes back here. But again, the GT-S for 82, 3, and 4 would have the Supra's rear suspension. In fact, the word is that the body shell is essentially a Supra from the firewall back. Let's keep walking around this side here. Now, the Supra would have had a spoiler up top here, not seen on the GT-S. But beyond that, the blacked out bumpers, the blacked out taillights, all this sinister up-level trim is absolutely indicative of the Supra and the GT-S. And even right down to the wheel arches, these are also Supra items, and they're made of fiberglass. You can see this one here is busted off, and there's the fiberglass inside. Underneath it, look at this. Here's the original wheel arch, which is trimmed out, I'm gonna say at the factory, and then covered by these. Again, these had a 14 by 7-inch wheel, which was, I believe, shared with the Supra. That might have had a 15, but all that said, the spokes were quite much the same. And again, the wheel arches pretty much shared. The door does open on this thing. It has the upscale interior with a 5-speed manual transmission. Not sure if that's shared with the Supra. I'm gonna guess the Supra probably had a little more torque capacity, but again, both had 5-speed manuals, there's overdrive in the top gear. The speedometer over there has a 130 mile per hour top end, and that is something that was specific to the Supra and the GT-S. Basic Celicas at this point in time would have had the 85 mile an hour speedometer. So this basically is like a Supra, but where it's different is right here. Now, it does have the Supra's front wheel arches, but the wheelbase on this is shorter than the Supra. In fact, this wheelbase is 99 inches. The Supra is 103, so there's a 4-inch difference. And why? Well, the Supra has a long inline 6. And basically the Supra engine is a 2.8 liter dual overhead cam 6 that wouldn't fit here. The GT-S, by contrast, has the same 2.4 liter single overhead cam inline 4 as a regular Celica. So the difference is 105 horsepower versus 160 horsepower for the Supra at this same point in time. Now, this is a good engine, and this one here, if we look at the cowl tag, 22R is the Toyota 4-banger engine, E, electronic fuel injection, C, California emissions. So this may or may not have been sent to the California market at some point in time, don't know. Now, this is a single overhead cam 4-cylinder engine. The Supra was a dual overhead cam inline 6. Similar downstairs, the crank, the rods, that sort of stuff, similar engine families, but again, 2 extra cylinders on the Supra, and as a result, 4 inches more length from the firewall forward. So that's why the Celica Supra and the Celica GT-S are the same from the firewall back, but from the firewall forward, the Supra is a longer car with the 6-cylinder engine. So it's a shock to see this. Now, here's the thing. This one here is an 84. This is the year that these things got the facelift, as it were, with hideaway headlights. 1982 and 3 would have had these headlights, would have been sort of on an angle facing up at the sky. They'd pop up when they went on. But again, for 84, the final year for the rear-wheel drive GT-S, they had this blacked out trim right here. Now, here's the deal. These are electric, but if and when they failed, and in fact, 70 Dodge Charger owners will know what I'm talking about, there's a manual override, this thing right here, this little red knob, you turn that thing and that lifts or recedes the light right there like that. So if there's a problem with your electrical system, that is how it was dealt with right there. Kind of interesting intake tract on this too. We can see here, here's the plenum for the electronic and fuel injection. The runners are quite long. Again, this takes advantage of the ram tuning effect that was first discovered by the 57 Corvette Rochester fuel injection and the 1960 long ram Mopar Max wedges. Again, supercharging in a sense right here, a free form of it with the ram tuned intake. But the intake track makes its way to the air filter box right here. The element is gone, but the actual inlet was this little hose right here, so kind of a circuitous way to get in. And if you look inside here, you'll see there's an inner bell mouth, this rectangular piece here, hiding inside of the filter. So all of this here done for reasons almost certainly to attenuate sound. In other words, tone down the induction roar that this thing would make. But again, that's the thing. This has 105 horsepower. A Supra has 160, 45 horsepower difference, and you're going to feel that difference. Let's walk through here and continue our little tour. Now, on the right front corner, we see the same fiberglass wheel arch as the Supra used. The disc brakes up front, I think, are a little smaller than Supra stuff, but again, that's disc brake stuff, and that would be standard on all Celicas, even the basic economy car. Now the fender, let's take a peek and look inside. You gotta love the junkyard, the X-ray view. And here's the McPherson strut, which is a great design, in fact, patented by a guy named McPherson who worked for Ford in the 1950s. But the beauty of the McPherson strut is that one item does so many jobs. The spring and the shock absorber are in one piece. The steering knuckles are kind of built in, so you get a lot of jobs done with one essential part. Nice stuff. But again, McPherson strut suspension up front for sure. Again, here is the Celica GT steering wheel, not a Supra wheel. So that's the tip of the iceberg, that this is a GT-S or a GT Sport and not a Supra, which of course here it is, the mighty Toyota Supra. And when I talk about the longer wheelbase on the Supra, I'm talking about this area right here. That's about 3 inches longer on a Supra to accommodate the inline 6, whereas the Celica GT-S and Celica is shorter here, 99 inches for the 4-banger. It doesn't need the extra distance. So it's kind of weird, like in the world of American muscle cars like Pontiac GTO or a Mustang, if those things had different wheelbases for engines, we'd say, what a weird thing, how exotic is that? Well, in the realm of the Toyota Celica Supra and the Celica GT-S, the wheelbase and the engine walked hand in hand. So that's just the beginning of the story of this poor car. And I dare say, this is kind of like a Formula Firebird to a Trans Am Firebird. They're both performance models. It's a sad thing to see this 84 Celica GT-S Supra from the firewall back sitting here in the junkyard. Will somebody come and save it? Well, if you like this video, you can come here if you want to Bernstein Auto Wreck and talk to Dale and maybe buy this thing. It's up to you. You do it. Or if you just want to learn more about this and other cars here, subscribe to the Steve Maggs YouTube channel.